Set 16 CRF Technical question and answers. Answers are highlighted in green. Question 1. CRF design and compliance. A pharmaceutical company is designing a CRF for a phase 3 oncology trial. The CRF must comply with regulatory guidelines to ensure data integrity. Which of the following best describes a key consideration when designing the CRF? Now option A says ensure that all CRF fields allow free text responses for flexibility. Well, whenever you're designing the CRF, it's not mandatory that you need to keep the free text response for, especially for all the CRF designs, right? So this is not the right answer. Option C says minimize data collection by only including primary endpoint variable. No, you cannot do this. You need to collect all kinds of data. We are not interested only in primary endpoint, right? All the data should be collected. Option D says allow the site staff to modify CRF structure based on patient needs. No, you cannot even modify the CRF structure based on whatever the patient's requirement is, right? So this is not the right answer. So the correct answer is the CRF should match regulatory submission formats, for example C- and SDTM. So the correct answer is B. Question 2. Data entry and validation. During a clinical trial, a data entry associate notices that a laboratory result for a critical biomarker is missing in the CRF. What is the best course of action? Option A, enter an estimated value based on previous visits. No, you cannot just put the estimate or some rough kind of figure for the previous visits, right? Option B, leave the field blank and move on to the next entry. No, you cannot even leave the field as blank or whatever if the parameter is critical, especially the biomarker in the laboratory, right? So you cannot leave such important parameter as blank. Option D, delete the entire CRF page and ask the investigator to re-enter all data. No, even you cannot do this. Like say for example, CRF is a particular design where it is based on the structure for the way the protocol is prepared, right? So based on all the protocol, whatever the points that needs to be collected, the data needs to be collected, the CRF is designed and structured in that way. So you cannot delete any single CRF page. All the CRF page entries should be there in the CRF and it should be collected as per the protocol scheduled assessments. So the correct answer here is issue a data query to the site to confirm whether the value was missed or not reported, right? So even if you see any field as blank or the value is not present where this is related to the critical biomarker. So when you have such important parameters, you need to ensure that you raise query to the site and ensure that you get the value, or it so could happen that the monitoring person did not notice it and just took a haste decision in not writing that particular value. So it is always better to raise the query and be on a safer side to get the value for the important biomarker. Question 3. CRF version control. A sponsor has made protocol amendments that require changes in the CRF. However, some sites are still using the old version. What should be done to maintain version control? Option A. Allow both versions of the CRF to be used for flexibility. No, you cannot use both versions. The reason is now whenever you are making any amendments, amendment is not going to be done for the all the parameters in protocol. Amendment is done only for that specific record or for that specific paragraph or for that specific question or for a specific assessment parameter. Only those amendments are done and the version is maintained. That does not mean that the entire protocol is changed, right? Whatever is required, only that is changed. So hence for that specific you need to refer to the that version. Option B, issue a memo instructing sites to manually adjust the CRF entries. No, you cannot manage all such entries manually. It has to be digitally. Option D, discard previously collected data to maintain consistency across versions. No, you even cannot do this. Whatever data that you have collected, you need to ensure that it is being maintained in the database. So whatever the previous data is, that is also there. You need to ensure that you need to keep in that database. So the correct answer is C. Ensure sites transition to the new CRF version and track which version is used for each subject. Right? Question 4. Adverse event reporting in CRF. A site reports an adverse event in the CRF but does not provide the severity or outcome. What is the best next step? Option A, assume the AE is mild, continue with the trial. No. Now, whenever we are dealing with human clinical trials data, even though the adverse event was present, but you cannot assume that it was mild, severe, or missing, or non-blank, and you cannot continue that, because that is just an imagination value, that is just an assumption. It is not the actual and the real value, right? Option C says remove the AE entry as incomplete data is not acceptable. No, even though the adverse event is present, but the severity and outcome is not present or the data is not available, you cannot even remove all such data entries, right? Option D says let the safety monitoring board team determine the AE details. Now, this is an irrelevant option because this has nothing to do with SMB, that is safety monitoring board, right? The safety monitoring board is that kind of committee who ensures that the safety parameter analysis is done as per the requirement, and they give approval saying that your adverse events safety analysis is okay, so that they come to know where we need to take this clinical trial, right? But this particular option D is an irrelevant option related to this question. So the correct answer is B. Issue a data query asking the site to complete the missing information. So even though the adverse event is present, but the severity, outcome, action taken, then start date, end date, then flags, whichever is missing, you need to raise such data queries to the site and ensure that you get the complete information from them. Question 5. Handling protocol deviations in CRF. During a site monitoring visit, you notice that a subject received a higher dose than specified in the protocol. How should this be reflected in the CRF? Option A. Ignore the deviation if the subject did not report side effects. No, such kind of deviations, even if that patient has received an higher dose, you cannot ignore it, because this is something not as per the calculated dose which is given. This is something given dose which was not even scheduled, right? So such kind of deviations you cannot ignore. Option C, create a new CRF field specifically for this deviation. No, you cannot even do this, right? Option D, modify the CRF entry to reflect the correct dose as per protocol. No, now you cannot modify and put the correct dose because it's the actual higher dose that is given, right? So you cannot manipulate the dose information and you use the correct dose and you modify the CRF entry. No, you cannot do this. So this is data manipulation, which is unethical to do it in the human clinical trials database. So the correct answer is B. Document the deviation in the CRF and ensure it is recorded in the protocol deviation log. Question 6. Missing data in CRF. A patient withdraws from the study before the final visit, leaving key efficacy data missing. What is the best approach to handling this in the CRF? Option A says enter estimated values based on other patients' data. Well, we are dealing with one specific patient, so it does not make sense in taking other patients' data and estimating, right? So this is not the right answer. Option B, leave the missing fields blank and submit the CRF. No, you cannot even do this. Option D, remove the patient's data entirely from. No, you cannot even do this because a particular patient can withdraw at any point of time in a clinical trial, right? That is his right to be present in that clinical trial. So the thumb rule for that specific patient is if the patient wants to withdraw before consuming the drug, that particular patient has the authority and right to take its own decision. So nobody can influence that patient that no, you stay in this study, right? So if the particular patient is voluntarily withdrawing at any stage of the clinical trial, whenever that is conducted, the patient has full right to come out of that clinical trial. So the correct answer is record the reason for missing data in the CRF and notify the study team. So you need to find out why the patient withdrew from the study. So that needs to be mentioned and you should inform the study team. Question 7. Electronic CRF versus paper CRF. A study team is considering switching from paper CRF to electronic CRF. What is one key advantage of using eCRF? Option A, sites can modify eCRFs to fit local needs. No, you cannot do this. You cannot just modify the data whatever as per your needs. It should be the actual data that has been monitored or that has been collected, that should be entered in the eCRF. Option C, no need for site training since eCRFs are self-explanatory. No, even if the electronic CRF is being implemented, training has to be given to all the site people so that it becomes very essential though, so that they know how to manage the electronic CRF. Option D, eCRFs eliminate the need for source data verification. So this is not the right answer. The correct answer is real-time data validation checks help reduce errors. So one key advantage of using the electronic CRF is to check the validation and help reduce the errors. Question 8. Handling lab data in CRF. A lab value is flagged as an outlier in the CRF, but the site investigator confirms it is correct. What should be the next step? Option A. Override the system flag and accept the value. No, you cannot override any kind of flags or whatever the outlier, right? Even if it's an outlier, you have to consider it as outlier. Option B, request the lab to rerun the test and replace the value. No, you cannot replace the value because this is an actual value that has been collected and where the principal investigator or the site investigator is saying that it is correct, right? Hence, you cannot replace the value. Option D, remove the value from CRF to avoid error in the. No, wherever, even if it's an outlier and the investigator is saying that it is correct, you cannot remove, you cannot replace, you cannot override. All these terminologies cannot be done because we are dealing with human trials clinical database. So now the correct answer is add a comment in the CRF explaining that the value is verified. So if the value is outlier and it has been flagged in the lab specific variable or the parameter, the comment section should say that the site investigator has confirmed that it is correct, hence the value will remain as is, hence there is no need to change this value. So this information is correct. So such kind of comments can be added into laboratory domains. Question 9. CRF and data privacy compliance. A clinical trial site accidentally enters a patient's full name in the CRF instead of a subject ID. What should be done to correct this? Keep the name for better tracking. No. You cannot disclose the name of that specific patient in the clinical trial even though after the clinical trial, right? The patient's information related to its personal details, name, then mother's name, father's name, then the surname, then all these information should be private and confidential. That those information, personal details of that specific patient should not be there in the database whenever it comes to, even though the patient's address, phone number, then whatever is related to its how many children that patient is having, whether that patient is married, unmarried. Now those information can be present that patient is married or unmarried, but like say for example the personal details should not be disclosed, it should always be remain as confidential. Option C says ignore it since authorized personnel will access the CRF. No, Replace the name with initials to protect privacy. No. Now, the first of all, accidentally he has entered. That should not be allowed, and it is not possible to do this. This shows that it's an unethical way of handling the data. Privacy is the important factor whenever we are doing the clinical trial, where the patient's privacy is at most important, right? So the option B is the correct answer, where issue a data query to the site to replace the name with the appropriate subject ID, right? Question 10. Serious adverse event SAE reporting. A subject is hospitalized due to a suspected drug-related adverse event. How should this be recorded in the CRF? As a regular adverse event with hospitalization noted in the comments? No. This is a serious adverse event, right? Then option C says ignore the hospitalization and focus on treatment details. No. Even if the patient has hospitalized, all those things needs to be confirmed because it is related to the suspected drug related adverse event. Option D says report it separately to the ethics committee but omit it from the CRF. No, that is what I'm saying. You cannot keep such important information as missing, blank, then replace, then omit, delete, ignore. So these kind of things cannot be done whenever you are dealing with the clinical trials human patient data. So the correct answer is as a serious adverse event with all required details documented in the SAE, right? Because whenever a particular patient is hospitalized, right, that itself is the serious adverse event, because that patient's sensitivity is checked, like the patient has suddenly been hospitalized, so it's a very serious concern because that has happened due to the consumption of that specific drug, and that adverse event has happened, so it's a very serious situation. So all these needs to be documented under SAE, and it should be present, all the details should be present. Please like, share, and subscribe. Leave a feedback comment mentioning any topic that you want me to make a video. Looking forward for a positive response. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. Leave a feedback comment. Many thanks for your support and having great connection.